I get it when a friend says they're about to drop a chunk of cash on a 45-inch gaming monitor. The first thing I ask is whether it's really going to fit their setup and actually make a difference in their play. The last thing anyone wants is a gorgeous screen that ends up as a pricey paperweight because it doesn't mesh with the desk, the graphics card, or the kind of games they run. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The LG 45GR95QE is one of those ultra-wide OLED, 240Hz beasts that sounds like it belongs in a pro sports arena, but the real question is, does it solve the everyday frustrations most gamers face, or is it just a flashy headline that could bite you later? First thing I looked at was how the monitor lives in a typical gaming room. At 45 inches and a 21:9 aspect ratio, it's practically a mini TV that demands a decent amount of desk real estate. I measured my own workstation and found I needed at least a 32-inch depth to give the curved panel room to breathe without hitting the wall. The stand is surprisingly flexible. Tilt, height, and swivel give you enough freedom to line the curve up with your eye level, which matters a lot when you're spending hours in a first-person shooter. The power draw is higher than a standard 27-inch LED, so make sure your surge protector can handle it, and don't forget to factor in a decent HDMI 2.1 cable. Older cables can cap the 240 Hz at lower resolutions. If you have a multi-monitor rig, the width can make side-by-side setups feel cramped, so many reviewers end up using it as a single primary display rather than a secondary pane. When it comes to the actual gaming experience, the OLED panel delivers the kind of contrast that makes dark scenes feel truly black, no blooming or gray halos that you see on most LCDs. In fast-paced titles like Valorant or Cyberpunk 2077, the 0.03 milliseconds response time combined with a 240 Hz refresh makes motion feel almost tactile, enemies flicker less, and tracking a moving target feels smoother than on a 144 Hz panel. Because it's an OLED, the color gamut is wide enough that even the most saturated reds in a racing game pop without oversaturating the rest of the palette. The FreeSync premium integration does a decent job of keeping the frame rate in sync with modern AMD GPUs, and I found that even on an NVIDIA RTX 3080 the monitor handled variable refresh without tearing, thanks to its G-Sync compatibility mode. In practice, that means you can crank the graphics settings higher and still get a fluid experience provided your GPU can push close to 240 frames per second at 3440x1440, which is where the sweet spot lies. That said, the monitor isn't without trade-offs. OLED technology, while fantastic for contrast, still carries a lingering risk of image retention if you leave static UI elements, think health bars or HUDs, on the screen for marathon sessions. LG includes a pixel shift feature that nudges the image subtly to mitigate this, but it's something you have to be aware of if you're playing games with persistent UI. The brightness peak, while respectable for an OLED, doesn't quite match the nits you get on high-end VA panels, so in a very bright room you might need to pull down the ambient lighting to appreciate HDR content fully. Price is another consideration. You're paying a premium for the size, the curve, and the OLED panel, and the total cost can push past the $2,000 mark. Finally, the sheer width means you'll have to adjust your mouse sensitivity or use a larger mouse pad to avoid running out of surface during intense strafing. So who should walk away with this monitor, and who should keep looking? If you're a competitive gamer who thrives on ultra-fast response, low input lag, and you already own a high-end GPU that can reliably hit 200+ FPS at WQHD, the LG 45GR95QE feels like a natural extension of your rig, a way to soak up more of the field of view and spot enemies that would otherwise be off-screen. Creative professionals who edit video or design in a widescreen format will also love the real estate and the color fidelity of OLED. On the flip side, if you're on a tighter budget, play mostly at 1080p, or you're sensitive to the occasional risk of burn-in, you'll probably get more bang for your buck with a 27 or 32-inch nanocell or VA panel that still offers high refresh rates. Also, if your gaming space is a small bedroom or a cramped desk, the curve and width could become more of a nuisance than a benefit. Bottom line, the LG 45GR95QE delivers on the promises that its headline specs shout about, but it shines best when you have the hardware, the space, and the willingness to care for an OLED surface. It turns a typical gaming session into something that feels cinematic, and the curvature really does wrap the action around you in a way a flat screen can't replicate. If that kind of immersion is worth the extra investment for you, it's a solid pick.